The little girl didn't raise her voice. She didn't point. She simply looked at the stranger's wrist and spoke a sentence that froze the room. "Hello, sir, my mother has a tattoo just like yours." The hardware store went quiet. No clanking tools, no footsteps, just a man staring at ink he hadn't looked at in years. A tattoo born from love, loss, and a promise he thought no one else remembered. For 9 long years, the truth stayed buried beneath routine, regret, and silence. But in that single moment, with one innocent sentence, everything cracked open. Stay till the end, because some secrets don't disappear. They wait for the right heart to reveal them. Marcus had learned how to live small, not because he lacked dreams, but because the big ones once shattered him. After the loss, he rebuilt his life piece by piece. The way he fixed broken cabinets and crooked doors at the hardware store where he worked. Honest work. Quiet days. No questions asked. Every morning started the same. Packing lunches. Tying shoelaces. Listening to Aaliyah talk about school projects and imaginary kingdoms. She was 8 now, bright-eyed, curious, and endlessly kind. Marcus raised her alone, never letting her feel the weight of the loneliness he carried. To her, he wasn't broken. He was Dad, the man who built tree houses on weekends, who burned pancakes but laughed about it, who showed up. Always. The tree house in their small backyard was his proudest creation, not because it was perfect, it wasn't, but because it gave Aaliyah a place to dream safely. Marcus had stopped dreaming for himself a long time ago. His dreams once belonged to someone else. Someone who left without a goodbye. On his right wrist, just below the cuff of his work shirt, lived a phoenix tattoo. Faded now, charcoal black with hints of red that time had softened. Most people assumed it meant resilience, rebirth, strength. Marcus never corrected them. He never explained that it was a promise, etched during a time when love felt permanent and the future felt certain. He hadn't talked about that love in nearly a decade. Not to co-workers, not to friends, not even to Aaliyah. Some memories hurt too much to touch. Some names felt dangerous to speak out loud. Marcus truly believed the past was finished with him, that whatever had vanished all those years ago was meant to stay buried. He had no idea that the past doesn't disappear. It waits, and sometimes it walks right up to you, looks at your wrist, and says hello. Zara didn't stare like a curious kid. She stared like someone who recognized something she wasn't supposed to understand yet. Marcus noticed her before he heard her. She was standing a few feet away near the paint aisle, small hands folded in front of her, shoes dangling off the edge of the cart as her guardian spoke to an employee. Her eyes were locked on his wrist. Not the tools he was holding, not his face, but the sliver of skin where his sleeve had slid back. Most kids ask questions. She didn't. Then came the sentence. Soft, certain, unafraid. "Hello, sir, my mother has a tattoo just like yours." Time didn't just slow. It fractured. Marcus felt it in his chest first, a sharp pull like a thread being yanked from deep inside him. He glanced down at his wrist, as if seeing the phoenix for the first time in years. The lines, the curve of the wings, the small scar just beneath it. Proof it wasn't some generic design picked from a wall. He looked back at her. "Just like mine?" he asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. Zara nodded. Same bird, same fire tail. She tilted her head, studying him now the way children study adults who don't know the rules yet. "Mama says it means starting over, but not forgetting." Marcus swallowed. That phrase, that exact phrase. He had said those words once, years ago, on a warm night when hope felt indestructible. Does she talk about it often?" he asked. Zara shook her head. "Only when she thinks I'm asleep." She paused and added, "She cries sometimes, but not the sad cry, the quiet one." Marcus's grip tightened around the tool in his hand. He had mastered hiding pain, turning it into routine, responsibility, silence. But this was different. This was a mirror held up by a child who didn't even know she was holding it. "What's your mom's name?" he asked, already afraid of the answer. Zara smiled. "Mama says not to tell strangers." Then she leaned closer and whispered, "But you don't feel like a stranger." That's when Marcus saw it. Her eyes, not just a color, deep brown, but the way they held focus, the way one eyebrow lifted slightly when she was curious. He'd seen that expression every morning in the bathroom mirror. He'd seen it in old photographs he kept buried in a box he pretended not to remember. A memory rushed back uninvited. A hospital room. A phone that never rang. A goodbye that never came. "Zara," a woman's voice called gently from the aisle. "Did you find the brushes?" Marcus looked up, and the world tilted again. She stood there frozen, paint samples in her hand, breath caught halfway in. Her hair was pulled back now, her face lined with time and responsibility. But it was her. There was no mistaking it. The woman he had loved. The woman who had disappeared. The woman he had mourned without a grave. For a moment, no one spoke. Then her eyes dropped to his wrist. The phoenix. Her hand trembled. "Marcus," she said, barely audible. The store seemed to fade. The shells blurred. The pass, carefully sealed and labeled never again, burst open all at once. "I thought," he began, then stopped. "Thought what?" That she'd vanished by choice? That she'd forgotten him? That the promise inked into his skin meant nothing to her? She took a step forward, then another, as if afraid he might vanish too. "You left?" Marcus said quietly. Not angry, just tired. No note, no call, nothing. Her eyes filled instantly. "I didn't leave you," she said. "I was taken." The word hit him harder than any accusation. She explained in fragments, medical complications, an emergency transfer, weeks unconscious. By the time she woke, she was told he had moved. No number, no address. And then, "Zara, I searched," she whispered. "I swear I did." Marcus looked at the little girl standing between them. This child who carried his eyes, his expression, his past, and felt something inside him break open. Zara looked from one adult to the other, sensing the gravity now. "Mama," she asked softly, "is this why you cry?" The woman dropped to her knees and pulled Zara close. "Yes," she said, voice shaking. "And why I hope." Marcus exhaled, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for 9 years. The phoenix on his wrist felt warm. Rebirth wasn't just survival. Sometimes it was reunion. Marcus knew the sound of her voice before his mind accepted it. It came softly from behind the aisle, uncertain, trembling, like it had traveled a long way just to reach him. "Zara?" The name fell into the space between them, and Marcus felt the past surge forward with a force he wasn't prepared for. He turned slowly. Simone stood there. Time had touched her, but it hadn't erased her. The sharp confidence she once carried had softened into something more careful. Her shoulders were tense, like she was always bracing for impact. In her hands were paint samples, forgotten now, hanging uselessly at her sides. For a moment, she looked like she might run, and Marcus recognized that look too. She had worn it once before, 10 years ago, on a night when promises were made and the future felt dangerously close. A night when a phoenix was inked into his skin and into hers, a symbol they chose together. Not forgetting, she had said, "No matter what." "Marcus," Simone whispered. He didn't answer right away. Words felt heavy, fragile. Saying her name might break something he had spent years carefully holding together. Zara looked up at Simone, then back at Marcus, her small face knitting together pieces no adult had explained. "Mama," she said slowly, "you know him." Simone's breath caught. Her eyes dropped to Marcus's wrist again, to the tattoo she knew better than her own reflection. Her fingers twitched, like she wanted to reach for it, but didn't deserve to. "I do," Simone said. "I know him." Zara took a step toward Marcus before Simone could stop her. "You have the same bird," she said again, louder now, as if repeating it might make the adults listen. "You both look sad when you see it." That was when Simone moved. "Zara, sweetheart," she said quickly, reaching for her daughter's hand. "We need to go." Marcus saw it, the instinct to flee, to bury the past again, to protect herself by pretending none of this was real. "Simone," he said, firm but not angry. "Don't." She froze. "I didn't come here for this," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't know it was you. If I had, you would have left sooner?" Marcus asked quietly. The question landed harder than he intended. Simone's eyes filled, and she pressed her lips together, fighting a sob. I was scared, she admitted. I spent years building a life where the past couldn't hurt us anymore. Us. Marcus looked at Zara. The child stood between them, eyes wide, absorbing everything. Children didn't understand betrayal or fear the way adults did. They understood truth, and Zara had recognized at the moment she saw his wrist. Is he my dad? Zara asked. The world stopped. Simone dropped to her knees so fast Marcus barely registered the movement. She cupped Zara's face with trembling hands. Oh, baby, she whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Simone looked up at him then, tears streaming freely now. I didn't know how to find you, she said. When I woke up in the hospital, you were gone. They told me you moved. I had no phone, no memory of your last name, just your first and the tattoo. She pushed up her sleeve. There it was, the same phoenix, same wings, same firetail, same promise. I never covered it, Simone said, even when it hurt. Marcus stepped closer, without realizing he'd moved. Why didn't you come back to the apartment? He asked. Her voice broke. It was empty. You were gone. I thought you left. They stood there in a hardware store aisle, surrounded by strangers, reliving a misunderstanding that had stolen a decade from them. Zara reached out and grabbed Marcus's finger with both hands. The contact sent a shock through him. Small, warm, real. You feel like home, she said simply. Marcus knelt down in front of her, eyes burning. Zara, he said gently, can I ask you something? She nodded. Do you want to know the truth, even if it's complicated? Zara considered this seriously, then nodded again. Mama says truth is better than secrets. Secrets make people lonely. Simone let out a sob. Marcus stood and looked at Simone. You can't run this time, he said, not as a threat, but a plea. Not from her. Not from me. Simone nodded slowly. I know, she whispered, and I won't. She took a deep breath. If you're willing, come to our place. Talk. For her. Marcus glanced down at his wrist, at the phoenix that had watched him survive without answers. Not just for her, he said. For all of us. And as they walked out together, Marcus realized something undeniable. Simone had run from the past once. But this time, the truth didn't stay behind. It followed her home. The truth didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces, like fragile glass laid gently on the table, one shard at a time. Simone's apartment was small but warm, filled with evidence of love lived quietly. Children's drawings taped the fridge, shoes by the door, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. It wasn't a place built on secrets. It was a place built on survival. Zara disappeared into her room with crayons, sensing instinctively that the adults needed space. Children always knew when something important was happening. Marcus and Simone sat across from each other, years of absence pressed between them like an invisible wall. I didn't plan to leave, Simone began, her hands folded tight in her lap. That night, when we talked about the future, I was already pregnant. Marcus's breath caught. I didn't know yet, she continued quickly. Not for sure. I found out days later. The room felt smaller. I came to the hospital because of complications, Simone said. They transferred me to another facility. I was unconscious for weeks. Marcus. When I woke up, everything was different. She swallowed. By the time I was strong enough to go back, you were gone. Marcus shook his head slowly. I never left you. I thought you disappeared. Simone looked up, eyes shining. I went back to the apartment. It was empty. Neighbors said you'd moved. I had no phone, no way to reach you. And then her voice cracked. Then I saw the photos. What photos? Marcus asked. On social media, she whispered. Someone tagged you. You looked happy, engaged, at peace. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He remembered that time clearly. The forced smiles, the attempt to move on, the engagement that ended quietly because his heart was never fully there. I thought, Simone said softly, that you'd chosen a life without me. She looked down at her hands. And I thought love meant not tearing that apart. Marcus stared at her, stunned. So you decided for me? Tears spilled freely now. I thought I was protecting you. Silence filled the room. Not angry, not sharp, but heavy with everything that had been unsaid for 9 years. I told myself I was strong enough to raise her alone, Simone said. And I was. But every year, the secret got heavier. Every birthday. Every question about fathers at school. Every time she asked why she didn't look like anyone else. Marcus closed his eyes. And the tattoo? He asked quietly. Simone pushed up her sleeve. The phoenix stared back at him, unchanged by time. I kept it because it reminded me that love doesn't die, she said. It transforms. Marcus laughed softly, a sound halfway to breaking. You always did believe that. They sat there, two people who had survived the same storm separately, realizing they'd been holding the same pain from opposite sides. I didn't tell you about Zara, Simone said, her voice barely above a whisper, because I didn't want to be the reason you lost something you'd rebuilt. Marcus stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to her. His shoulders trembled. You don't get to decide what I lose, he said, voice thick, or what I gain. Simone nodded, wiping her tears. I know, and I'm sorry. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he turned. I lost years, he said honestly. Moments I can't get back. Simone nodded again. I know, but, he continued, his voice steadying, I didn't lose her. Zara peeked out from her room. Sensing the shift, Marcus smiled gently at her and held out his hand. Come here, he said. She walked over slowly, cautious but curious. Marcus knelt in front of her. Zara, he said, do you remember what you asked me at the store? She nodded. If you were my dad. He glanced up at Simone, who nodded through tears. Yes, Marcus said softly. I am. Zara stared at him for a long second, then climbed straight into his arms like she'd been waiting her whole life. Marcus held her, shaking, as 9 years of absence collapsed into one perfect moment. You came back, she whispered into his shoulder. I never left, he said, kissing her hair. I just didn't know how to find you. That night, they talked until the hours blurred. Marcus told Simone about Aaliyah, about late-night homework sessions and tree houses and burnt pancakes. Simone listened with a mix of sadness and gratitude. She has a sister, Simone whispered. Marcus smiled. She's always wanted one. When Marcus finally brought Zara home to meet Aaliyah days later, the girls circled each other cautiously, then bonded instantly over shared crayons and laughter. Two lives that had been missing each other without knowing it. Later, when the house grew quiet, Marcus sat alone and looked at his wrist. The phoenix. Once, it had represented survival. Now it meant something else entirely. Truth, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that rebuilds. Simone stood beside him, hesitant. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, or anything more than honesty. Marcus looked at her, not as the woman who disappeared, but as the woman who survived, the mother who made impossible choices out of fear and love tangled together. We both lost time, he said, but we found something bigger. Simone nodded. Family? Marcus smiled softly. Family. 9 years ago, silence had felt like love. But love, Marcus realized, wasn't letting go. It was finally telling the truth and choosing to stay. Aaliyah didn't ask questions first. She didn't demand explanations or search for differences. She smiled. I always wanted a sister. The words landed softly, but they changed everything. Zara stood half a step behind Marcus, fingers curled into his shirt, unsure whether she was allowed to step forward. She had imagined this moment in fragments. Fearful ones. What if she wasn't wanted? What if she didn't belong? Aaliyah answered without knowing the question. She walked up to Zara, looked at her shoes, then at her face, and grinned. Do you like climbing trees? She asked. Zara nodded slowly. I'm not very good. Aaliyah shrugged. Me neither. That's why it's fun. And just like that, the tension dissolved. Within minutes, the girls were outside, laughter floating to the yard as if it had always lived there. Marcus watched from the porch, heart full in a way he didn't have words for. 2 lives, both his, finding each other without instructions. The treehouse stood where it always had, a little crooked, a little worn, built with care, not perfection. Aaliyah had named it the Lookout years ago. Zara renamed it instantly. "It's a castle," she declared. "Every castle needs 2 princesses." Aaliyah considered this seriously, and a secret password. They spent the afternoon hammering loose nails, tying string lights, and arguing over imaginary rules. Simone sat beside Marcus on the porch steps, neither of them speaking much. They didn't need to. Some moments didn't ask for commentary. What they were watching wasn't just children playing. It was healing in motion. Aaliyah showed Zara where Marcus kept the extra nails. Zara showed Aaliyah how to braid string into bracelets. Differences faded into details. What mattered was the way they leaned toward each other, not away. That evening, as the skies softened into gold, the girls sat cross-legged in the treehouse, sharing snacks and secrets. "Is it weird?" Zara asked quietly. "Having the same dad?" Aaliyah thought about it. "No," she said. "It's like finding something you didn't know you lost." Zara smiled. Marcus felt something settle inside him then, a deep, quiet peace. This wasn't the family he had planned. It wasn't the future he once imagined. But it was real. Later, after bedtime stories and whispered goodnights, Marcus stood alone beneath the treehouse. The lights glowed softly above him. 2 shadows moved behind the curtain. Sisters, not strangers. Simone joined him. "Thank you," she said, "for letting us in." Marcus shook his head gently. "For staying." Family, he realized, wasn't built in perfect moments. It was built when people chose honesty over fear, courage over pride, forgiveness over silence. 2 girls, 1 father. A treehouse turned castle. Not perfect, not planned, but strong enough to last. Some families are born. Others are rebuilt, with truth as a foundation, and love as the roof that holds all together. Some families are born. Some are chosen, and some are torn apart, only to be rebuilt stronger than before. The phoenix tattoo was never just ink. It was a promise that even broken wings can learn to fly again. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about love, loss, and second chances. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come to hurt you. It comes to bring you home. Red Heart,